Welcome to the Postpartum Coach podcast, where we embrace our needs as moms. We learn to lead ourselves first, then our families, and where we create our own healing from the inside out to find our way to the work we were meant to do in this world. I'm your host, a fellow mom of 3 and a certified life coach, Lizzie Langston. Good morning, everybody. I say good morning because it's morning where I am, but maybe it's evening for you. Maybe you're doing the dishes, whatever you're doing. I'm so happy to be here in your ear today. Thank you for sharing some minutes with me. I wanted to first just express so much love. I just have so much love for this community, the Postpartum Coach podcast. I also want to say hi. I'm running some Facebook ads, and so maybe some of you are new around here. Maybe you just found me, and I just want to say, hey, I'm a normal mom. What's up? Okay, so today I want to talk about depression culture. So I just talked about trauma culture. I want to talk about depression culture. It's similar but different. And it comes up postpartum. Like, here's the thing. It's interesting. Most of us are familiar with the concept of trauma, like our whole lives. We've heard about it here and there, although lived experience is super different than like actually going through it, right? Same thing with depression. So postpartum depression, it's really interesting because it hits people that haven't typically struggled with depression, right? There's this general depression that maybe people have struggled with since they were little. And then there's postpartum depression. Now, some women who come up against postpartum depression have experienced depressiveness before being postpartum. And it's something that's familiar to them. And maybe they even identify as like somebody who struggles with depression. But many of us don't. Many of us are like, I am a happy person. I am not typically like this. What's going on? It's very, very different. And so we're a little bit vulnerable is what I want to show you, because as we start to come into the world of depression and learning about it, we come up against all sorts of information, right? And what I want the most for you is empowerment. Okay. Education is part of empowerment, but I want to give you a perspective today around depression culture that you can take with you as you go to your OBGYN's office and you talk about medication and you talk about depression, or as you Google it, or as you come across random podcasts and you're just doing your due diligence and you're really taking your healing into your own hands, which I'm like, good job, mama, pat yourself on the back. If that's you and you're just like kind of trying to figure out what the heck is this? By the way, go to I think it's episode 2 or 3 on the beginning of this podcast. It's season 1, and it's the difference between postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, and baby blues, and all that stuff, psychosis, all that. That will be helpful too on your research. But take this with you first. Okay, so depression culture. On the extreme, you might have somebody who's like, depression isn't even a real thing. Somebody somewhere told me that like Tom Cruise doesn't think postpartum depression is a real thing, which for some reason didn't surprise me. But also it's like somebody saying the Holocaust isn't real. Like, what? That's like collective bipolar. Like, you can't we have issues if you're going to say that. Okay. So, to say postpartum depression isn't real would be the far end of the depression culture spectrum. Okay. It would be the far end. Just like, I don't know if you listened to the trauma culture piece, the podcast episode on that, but that's like the far end. Okay. Then we have the other end, which is, like, if you tell me I'm not depressed, if you try to take this away from me, I'm going to go commit suicide. And then there's people who say, like, okay, for example, one time when I first was kind of into this work, I posted on my social media, I was like, you are not your brain. And I was offering hope to depressed people. Like, listen, you can get a handle on your thoughts and you can pull out of this. And somebody said, like, expressed fear. Somebody on my social media platform expressed fear. Like, they're just going to go commit suicide. If they try to like get their thoughts together and they can't, it's just going to push them deeper into depression. And while that maybe potentially could happen, that is the far other end of the spectrum, which is this fear-based protectionist piece. Okay. Now, you might be somewhere in that end of the deep end. Like, I know I certainly was at some point along my journey. I needed to feel that fear, and I needed to protect myself with my fear by not allowing any tools to come my way. And so what I did when I was on that far end of the depression culture is I resigned to my diagnosis. I let it define me, and that was safety for me. I needed to be there. So just like with the trauma culture episode, what I'm not going to say, I am noticing I have a little bit more of an opinion on this one, just because I have pulled out of depression, and part of that process was me deciding that I could control depression, right? So that's a very middle ground piece. If there had to be a middle to this spectrum of depression culture, it's this idea that yes, it's real, and there's a purpose to the diagnosis, and there are tools out there like, antidepressants that one can truly look at. And there's work we can do on the inside. Okay. So just to review, the very left, like the very shallow end, or the very dismissive end of depression culture is like, square your shoulders, buck up, get going, you'll be fine. Like, this isn't even real. It's total denial. And then there's like validation to the extreme on the other end, which is like actually harmful. There can be harmful validation. Did you know that? Okay, let me just say what I mean by that is when somebody isn't looking for validation, but all they get is validation, and what they're really wanting, because they've already validated themselves, they just want tools to move on. That's when it's like not helpful validation. And actually that happens a lot in therapists' offices. With women who are ready for coaching. So what I'm not saying is that therapists are doing it wrong. And I'm not saying that you're going to be messed up in therapy. What I'm saying is there is a point for women where therapy has served its purpose and they're ready for coaching. And I see that point regularly. Actually, in the beginning of season 2 here on the podcast, if you go to the episode about getting help postpartum, 3 husbands' perspectives, Andy, the husband of my client, Alex, he talks about this. He talks about how she went to therapy. It was a little bit scary because they were like, okay, just so you know, in the therapist session, like we might have to report these things to CPS by law. She hadn't said anything that would require that, but they had just let her know at the beginning of the session, like, hey, right? And so there was that. And then there was like the validation, which actually was really helpful, but then it wasn't. There was a point where like, she's like, okay, I get it. Like, I can just love myself where I am, and I'm ready for tools, both. Like, I really genuinely feel okay with like all that's happening in my psyche. And can you please just tell me give me some tools, throw me a bone here, like throw me a lifeline. So that's when you're feeling that, that's when you're ready for coaching. Okay. But anyway, so when I talked about validation, I was at the far end of the spectrum, right? There can be unhelpful validation. There can be a lot of fear, and there can be a lot of entitlement. Like, no, I'm entitled to this diagnosis. You cannot take it away from me. You cannot tell me that I am not my brain. You cannot tell me that my thoughts are playing a role here, because I don't want to hear it. And that's the truth, really the truth about the depression culture down that lane on that end of the spectrum is that they don't want to hear it, and they shouldn't then. They're not ready for it. Why tell somebody a truth that isn't theirs? So one thing I want to teach you about healing, okay, is that there is I want you to imagine like a solid line of ground, okay? And then there's a triangle, a big, tall triangle. And the ground forms the base of the triangle. And then there's like this, tall two walls that make a big it's like a mountain peak, okay? And at the base of that triangle is like shame and guilt and fear, okay? And you literally, your body, in an energetic way, it vibrates super, super low. So neutral, I think, is 250. I could be wrong here. Anything below 250 is like low vibration, okay? Negative zones. Shame and guilt and fear are like the most low vibrating emotions you could feel, especially shame. Okay. And shame is actually like shame on repeat is a big player in the creation of long-term depressiveness. I think people can get depressed when they are grieving, People can get depressed when they're not listening to their own desires and their own needs. So depression has many faces. But when it comes to postpartum depression, there's an interplay of all of the faces. So there is a little bit of the shame and guilt that causes the depression, which I used to think that was all that caused it. So you'll hear me on the Postpartum Coach podcast in season 1. You'll hear me say like, that's what causes it. And that is, for some people, that's the main thing. And that's definitely a leg of the healing when it comes to depression that we want to address. But there's also grieving that can cause depression. When you're not tuning into your grieving, or when you're stuck in the processing of grieving, that also can cause depression. There's trauma stored in your body that can cause depression. When you're ignoring yourself and you're disconnected from yourself, and especially your own desires, and you literally can't remember what your hobbies are, and you don't even know what you like to do for fun anymore, that can bleed into depression. So when you put yourself on the back burner in your motherhood, or postpartum. So depression has many faces. But the shame and guilt at the bottom of this triangle, those are the lowest vibrating. Okay. So going back to this triangle analogy, when you're in shame and guilt, your view of your depression is a certain way, and your ability to heal is a certain way. This is why when people come to me for healing, I have them go through the postpartum anxiety course. That course, even if you don't understand or hear everything I say, you're going to get access to me. I vibrate at a high level because I regularly am doing things and listening to music and cleaning out my emotions and doing energy work to where I'm not tooting my horn here. The point of me sharing that isn't to say like I'm some angel, but like there's a strategy in me having you go through that course from the beginning, because you're basically being groomed to heal. Okay. Literally, like in that course, you're being primed to heal, whether on an energetic level, right? Not even like, okay, so in the course, for example, Intro to Healing, I talked to you about healing mindset pieces and like the thoughts that really spin women out in their healing and make them take a couple steps backward. Yeah, it's true. It's all good. But on an energetic level, you're being doused in like higher vibes than you're probably sitting at if you're experiencing a lot of depression and anxiety. And I did that like strategically. God is so good. He's teaching me so much about this. Okay. So I just want you to know that as we raise your vibration energetically, as you go from shame and guilt to like curiosity, to then compassion, to then love and total acceptance, to then joy, right? As you move, and by the way, in the triangle, you're getting higher and higher to the tip of the triangle, right? So you're blowing past the low vibes, you're going past neutral, and you're going up into the highest vibrations, which at the tip of the triangle is love. Love is the highest vibrating emotion. Love and gratitude are like very, very tip top. Isn't that cool? So as you go through the postpartum, I wasn't really planning on talking about my course, but it's kind of all fitting in here. It's true though. It's like a funnel. It's like a backwards triangle. So when you start my course, it's like a triangle laying on its side, and you're at the base of it. You're at that wide base of the lowest vibration emotions that literally take up the most space in our bodies. They're so heavy. They're burdensome. Okay. You're starting there. And the further you go through my course, you're getting into the narrower part of the triangle. Remember, it's laying on its side. You're going again from shame and guilt and fear to open curiosity, which is kind of neutral, to then going past neutral into compassion, love, forgiveness, healing, right? Healing happens. And really, when we say healing, when we're healing from depressiveness on an energetic level, what's happening is you're raising your vibration. And so what I want to teach you, so then my membership, all right, so the course gets you like vibing high, right? Gets you like healing literally. And healing is just raising your vibration, right? But the membership then teaches you how to do that on the regular. So you're going to get a big dose of it once it's kind of like, I'm going to give you the fish in the course. I'm going to give it to you. But then a membership, I'm teaching you how to fish, and you're going to throw it. You're going to cast your line in the water, and it's going to be wrong. You're going to suck at it, and you're not going to catch anything. And then you're going to come to the weekly coaching call, and you're going to tell me about it, and I'm going to tweak it. And then you're going to go back and you're like, oh my gosh, I got a bite on my ring. I didn't catch him, but I got a bite. And then you're going to come back to the membership community, and you're going to like post in the community, hey, does anybody else struggle with this? Like, I'm trying to troubleshoot this. How can I do this? And then we're all going to help you, and you're going to have that. And then you're going to go back, and then you're going to catch like 2 fishes on your first try. You're going to be like, what is even happening? Okay. So that's how it can be with your healing. So go to lizzieLangston.com/course. That's where you can get access to that. It's $500. Okay. It is about the price of maybe a month of therapy. And it's going to give you, I've literally had people do with me in 6 months. If you go to that husband's interview, I think it's maybe episode 1, season 2 or something around there. Literally people have done with this process that is in my postpartum anxiety course. They've done what they wanted to do. This was her husband's words. Okay. And I didn't pay him to say this. I didn't give him anything for this. He told us that she did in 6 months. Actually, it's not even been a full 6 months, probably about 6 months. What they had been working on helping her do for years in their marriage. They've been married for 12 years. Okay. So we address childhood trauma stuff. We address depression and anxiety. This is the ultimate course for healing on an energetic level, right? The postpartum anxiety course first is going to give you a big boost. And then from there in the membership, you're going to have the opportunity to troubleshoot, to refine. And I recommend you hang out in the membership for 18 months. I'm just going to tell you straight up. So I would buy because I give you deals if you buy more months at a time. So, consider it, look at your finances, do it however you need to do it. That's just my recommendation. 18 months is solid. And then from there, you can kind of go from there. So anyway, I hope this is helpful to you. I want you to watch out for those people. I don't say watch out as if the people are bad or dangerous, but those people who are defending people's depression and who are afraid of people from depression, getting tools to heal because they're like, well, if the tools don't work, then that person's just going to go jump off a cliff or something. Listen, those people have fear. They're vibrating in fear, and that's okay. Let that be their truth. But if you don't want that to be yours, if you don't want to identify as the diagnosis, and if you don't want to be on antidepressants your whole life and tell yourself that that's okay, whatever. Although literally I have no problem with people doing that. I was on them for a while. And I loved them when I had them. And then there was just this day where I didn't want them anymore. So I really dug into my healing and I figured out how to not need them anymore, how to get my mind in order and organize the matter within me. And then my outer world made more sense. So that's possible. Healing is possible if you want it to be. And when I say healing is possible to somebody that doesn't want it to be possible, it's not possible for them. And they don't want it to be possible. And they like the life that they've adapted to with their depression. And that's okay. But I still am going to proclaim, nothing's going to stop me from saying, I believe that healing is possible for everyone through Jesus Christ. And if you want some of that, go to lizzieLangston.com/course, get started today. And we'll talk to you inside the membership and inside the course. Love you guys.
Hey, Lizzie here. If you love what's on the podcast, you're going to love my postpartum anxiety online course. The course is designed to help you manage your anxiety, reconnect with yourself to avoid deeper depressiveness, and then address any broader traumas from childhood and beyond. To purchase the course, go to lizzieLangston.com/course. That's Lizzie, Lizzie, Langston, LANGSTON.com/course. I cannot wait to see and hear how you transform in the online course. I'll see you inside.